You know what? The basketball game starts at 8.
And yeah.
I'd like to call the
Minneapolis.
committee of the whole of the village board, Short Village Board to order at 6:33 p.m. All trustees are present with the exception of trustee Lynn, who is excused. We have one item on the agenda this evening, and it is to consider the 2023 community survey questions and content. The memo has previous results and samples of work linked, and then assistant. Yeah, I don't hear myself. Oh, here we go. Okay. So basically, we have in front of us a draft, a red line draft with some changes based on staff input, and this is coming to us. No action is required this evening or agended this evening, and this is purely for getting input from trustees at this time. So Assistant Village Manager Anderson is with us on this item. So with that, would you like to give us any framing before we start, or should I just open it up for?
I can provide just a
Okay.
few comments. Yes. So essentially, well, the essence of the community survey from years past was maintained, because I know by looking at the survey, it's kind of longitudinal. We want to make sure we're comparing against the same things year over year, or I guess every 3 years or so. So looking at the 2019 survey, I used that as a starting point. Before Tyler had left, he'd gotten a start on some potential 2022 survey questions, so I used that as well. You'll note in the memo that I've made some updates to it just based on relevance and timeliness. You'll also note that in the memo provided in the history that the survey used to be contracted out, and it was recommended in the 2019 survey to do this internally. So again, making sure that we can keep it as apples to apples as possible. I did want to make sure to maintain what we'd asked in years prior to help lighten the load and make sure I can get it done and turned around to the board quickly. Outside of minor changes, you'll note that the remarks that I've highlighted in the memo are really just about asking a question regarding the ease of voting in the village. I also added one about gauging the opinion of fees or parking meters in the business district, a refuse collection utility question in the fees section. Also asking a question in the environmental section just to get the idea about how the community perceives the village performs as it relates to environmental concerns. I did add a question regarding the DPW facility discussion, since it's been a discussion within the community and among the board. And then last suggestion from one of the department heads was to separate out the race and ethnicity questions to have those listed separately. Other than the communication plan that I've also included, that just breaks down the timeline of how we're going to go about releasing the postcard, releasing the survey to the community, and then the community survey itself. Those are all the attachments that I included in the memo.
Thank you. And I remember in years past that there was kind of a discussion, and there's a sort of best practice among surveyors around, there's a certain point at which the length of the survey matters in terms of getting completion. And so did we take that into consideration?
I did have a comment in a pass-on document that Tyler left behind about the fact that, and we promise in the introduction that it takes no more than 10 to 15 minutes. I think that's a lofty goal, because I think looking at if you're really going to be intentional and as a community member want to consider each of the sections that you're filling out, because we list quite a few areas, even in questions 2 and 3. So it would be the goal that the survey could stick around the same length.
Okay, thank you. So we'll keep that in mind in our discussion this evening. I know Trustee Arndorfer submitted some feedback. So were you able to capture that? And so you can ask any questions. I noticed that there was not a streetlight question, so I'm guessing that that'll come up for discussion. But at this point, I'll open it up for comments and questions from the board.
Arthur can go ahead first.
Trustee Ursink.
Does somebody have to fill out the whole survey in order for it to be complete, or can they fill out the a certain amount of questions that they feel like they can answer?
At this point, the survey on Google Forms does not have every section required.
Mm.
We do want to make sure to capture the demographic data. So if there's a note that I could include in the introduction, I'd be happy to do that. But we can leave it, of course, to the board as far as which would be non-negotiables that we definitely want to track.
Mm.
But at this point, none of them are all set up as required.
And then my other question is, in number 4, it says, please rate your perception of the following community improvement programs and initiatives, and it has business district redevelopment. Is that housing redevelopment? Is, what is, I'm just curious what that means, or how you would define business district redevelopment.
Similar to the note that we included in the parentheses next to improvements of parks and public spaces, I'd be, of course, welcome to any feedback that the board has.
Mm.
Again, with this being my first go around, I wanted to make sure to keep it the same, but I'm happy to include more feedback or more information so that it can make sense to the community.
Maybe it's something, if you wouldn't mind, I would just share with Janet Henning from the bid, and maybe we could kind of construct a question that would be a little bit more relevant to the bid and to us as a village, because this I think some people could take this as certain businesses, like redevelopment of businesses, or is it redevelopment of is it commercial, is it residential? So it'd be nice to get some clarity on that.
To be sure I'm tracking, you'd like me on that one bullet under question 4 to get feedback from Janet, or add a new question regarding redevelopment?
I would say I would just maybe get some feedback from Janet and have, me and her can have a little bit of a conversation and see, how we can frame a better kind of approach to that question.
Sure.
Just so it's a little clear for people.
Okay, great.
And one differentiation would be, storefront redevelopment versus adding housing. And
Yeah, I think it
see
might
that-
be confusing if people are thinking, is it retail, is it commercial, is it residential? And now with our new zoning code, maybe there's a question that we can morph all of that to kind of together to be a little bit more clear. Because when you say business district, people automatically think businesses, shops, retail, but then you also have a lot of residential going up in our business district. So I want to make that clear.
Multifamily.
Mhm.
Thank you. All right, Trustee Stokebrand?
Along those lines, I guess I'm confused too. Community improvement programs, do we currently have one for our business district that I don't know about? I mean, maybe BART is the one. I mean, I wonder if this is, just something that shouldn't be under this heading. You know what I'm saying?
Or just change the format of the question a little bit, because again, yeah, I didn't touch that, but I did get the feedback from Bart, and that's why bullet 1 was taken out after all.
Okay.
Yeah, I think if we change the wording of that,
Sure.
I think it'd be a lot different,
Okay.
because I would think of the business facade improvements as part of an initiative or a program that we had and it's no longer available, but there is no real redevelopment program that we have going on right now. So,
I mean, the code update was the closest
Mhm.
thing and it's done.
Yeah.
And so I don't really think that current community improvement program for our business district that the village is doing.
Okay, we'll look back at that question, see how we can change the wording.
I was wondering about parks and public spaces. I don't see anywhere on here Atwater Beach mentioned, and I'm just wondering if somewhere we could talk about beach, groins.
In section 6 for infrastructure and public spaces questions.
It's a kind of a combination green area infrastructure. I mean, I would actually put it mostly in parks and public spaces and not so much. I mean, to me, infrastructure is very clearly to most people, water, sewer, stormwater, streetlights, pavement projects. But we're just at sort of the beginning of that. So I guess I'm curious about the elections question. What are we hoping to learn from that we, if we only have a certain amount of things that we can ask because we want people to complete it and we want to say you can be done with this in 5 or 10 minutes or whatever. I'm just wondering, what can we do to change our voting and make it more accessible? I mean, it seems to me so many things are out of our hands. They're at the state level. Do I want to give up a question on voting accessibility in the village? And if someone can help me with this, that'd be great. I don't see the relevance. But Toya's not here, so I don't want to, if she wants that in here, I just feel like we're sort of hamstrung what we can do.
Yes.
I mean, the only changes that you realistically can do would be to increase hours, either early voting after 5 p.m. or early voting on weekends. But as far as like day of, your ability to move locations, I think that stuff pretty fixed. I think that there are probably other areas, agreeing with you, I think there are probably areas out in the village, not incredibly easy. All.
And our
Aside
staff
from-
increased their own hours
Yeah, but I mean, if it comes back and it says, well, we would love to vote early until 8 p.m. or early on the weekends, financially, we couldn't do it anyway. So, getting that response doesn't seem to be terribly helpful. I would be in favor of fixing perhaps a little bit more relevant or something that would give us some insight. Relighting.
I would certainly seek Clerk Harrell's input on that, but I would think, we're doing all we can.
Or may I? I'm sorry. Trustee Stoper, just before we get too far away from it, to make sure I'm tracking, you'd mentioned Atwater Park. Would that be an additional bullet under question 5 for rating satisfaction with services, or?
It doesn't seem to fit there, does it?
Or under the infrastructure and public spaces.
Can I think about that and get back to you?
I'll be back at
I mean,
that.
I guess I was thinking the funding questions we ask about, how would you feel about changing the refuse to a utility? And I really appreciated the information in there that explains the negatives and the positives to that, how the cost would be spread. I'm wondering if we should do the same thing about streetlights. Would you want streetlights to be a separate utility? I don't know, but someone told me that Milwaukee has it as a line item on a quarterly bill. I don't know if that's true. I was reading about Detroit, one of their streetlights done. They were looking at, decades to get it done. And so they created a street utility and got it done in 3 years. I don't know. It's just, to me, it's sort of like the refuse utility question. I think it would be good. I would favor putting those funding option questions on there. The one thing I also noticed that we didn't have, when I look at big budget items, public safety is as big as public works, if not bigger. We don't have a single public safety question here. And I'm just wondering if somewhere, if we take out the voting, can we add something that says, are they binary? Do you get to choose different ones? Do you have any public safety concerns in the village of Shorewood or something like that? And I know there's one, I think, generally about crime. Traffic, pedestrian safety, theft.
We do ask about satisfaction with services.
That might be, yeah, maybe.
It's under police services is under number 5.
Okay. An all-encompassing question. And then,
Right. And I understand that public safety concerns are different than services. So that's just to be clear what we would be going for.
So one thing that I think that, I think there are a lot of questions we could ask. But I also think that there is an opportunity to add in some space for, people, like an open-ended question added in, like, so because when people read these, it means different things to different people.
Right.
And that way we get a little bit better sense of, what do they mean by public safety? How are they interpreting, a question about, how people use bikes in the village. So I think if there's just an option for people to leave comments on some of them, that might help us get some more information instead of trying to develop a question for every single thing. Although I do think some of these are really good to add. And one that I'm interested in adding, and I think to me, it's some of this too is like having a baseline for future boards and staff. When Trustee Stokebrand mentioned about Atwater Beach and Park, I would love to get a question, about maybe there's just something broadly about Atwater Beach and Park, like, do people is it a priority for them to keep lifeguards? Because that's a conversation we've had. To me, it is. Do they want to see us add services in that, line? Or, what do people think about charging for beach access? That's something I'm personally against. And I know different people have different feelings, but it might be nice to just kind of collect a baseline of where village residents are at this point in time on some of those issues.
To the point on adding a comment section, question 13 does have that text field, but I could suggest maybe at the end of each section, you're adding that. open
Yeah,
text
and
field.
maybe just like comments, like optional,
Related
right?
to-
So people don't think they have
Right.
to, but I think some people will want to explain their answer.
Well, so if you look at, the 2019 survey, there's like pages and pages and pages and pages of comments, some that are like 2 words and some that are very lengthy. So I guess, I think it probably does make, and the comments are a range, like just a range of everything that's in here. So I think it comes down to also like the organization of the survey. Does it help to have all of these random comments at the end? Or would it be easier to kind of distill everything if they were kind of in the sections,
Right.
so maybe we break out the comments and they're in each of these sections. So they're a little bit, kind of more focused on that topic that's being discussed.
And I think that you get some really, really wonderful feedback from people, giving them that opportunity, because not everybody, is able to make it out to a board meeting but they have something that they want to say and they want us to know. And I think you get a lot of good information that way.
I guess too, speaking to the other point about a baseline, I think a lot of the value in this is comparing the different surveys through the year so you can see if there's a change in public sentiment about a different issue. So, I don't want to like remake everything and lose all that history, but I do think I have a question about the infrastructure and public space questions. I would rather have something about the groins at Atwater than these questions about the public works facility, because number one, given this information, I think the facility should, when you have 3 TBDs in there, I just think it's so confusing and so vague. It would be very difficult for this to be meaningful. We don't know. Weekly refuse collection to be determined. Would it go from once a week to every 10 days or every 2 weeks? I think with the vagueness, it's not, I don't see the value in putting this in here.
Maybe it could be reworked a little bit so it's a little bit more concise. But I think it's a valuable question. At least a DPW question, something a little bit more simplified about the facility and the services. Because right now it's there's a lot there. So, and I think it might be confusing to a lot of people taking the survey.
I guess that is what I see as the problem. This is so complicated to try to turn this into a yes or no. You can do more damage than you can do moving, it's too hard to condense into 2 questions in a meaningful way.
How are you going to explain groins though? That's the question.
Call him a jetty.
Jetty groins.
Folks are doing
Great.
it. As far as infrastructure and DPW, I would move that up or is it 6 right now? I would move that up to 2. I think if people aren't going to take this entire survey, first portion of it, I don't know if you have to take all of it, but I would like to get the DPW questions cleaned up. I agree with some of what Trustee Arndorfer said in his email that I'm assuming will be. This is a bit push-pulley for me. Remain at the existing site with reduced levels of service as like the opening line to the first question versus move to another site outside the village within a 1 to 2 mile radius with access to a train. I mean, like, they just need to be cleaned up. And I think it's important. I disagree with you, Trustee Stokebrand, I'm sorry, about the jetties. I think it's important to have PW in there. I just think that they need to be clean and a little bit more concise. And I would prefer if they don't start with, do you prefer to have current service levels or reduced service levels?
Right. It's a
Because
fair question.
they're not apples to apples at that point. For parking, the parking section, I would like to add, the board prior to us moved from 1.7 to 1 for parking ratios. I'd like to add a question about that in there. It's going to obviously lead to more street parking with new developments that are coming in the village. So are people in favor of having a 1-to-1 ratio for new condominiums, or us to move back to something that would be, in my opinion, a bit more reasonable? So that would be those 2 questions. And then the demographics. We could probably argue about this for days. I take offense to the Latinx description. It's not a term that's recognized by the Latino community. It's not used in academia anymore. I would prefer Latino if someone wants to use Latina, but Latino is the correct term. So I would like to see Latinx moved. That's what I have.
Thank you. We have 5 minutes left under this item.
I just want to confirm then, this is very loose in terms of compliance. So I know we're saying per household, but we have no way of knowing, do we?
That's right.
This is all an honor system. We're trusting you're in the village. We're trusting that there's 1 per household. And so it is what it is. I appreciate that staff is taking this on themselves. I think that's great. I think it's, I know you're going to do the parks plan too. And I think I'm glad to see that we're not hiring consultants for everything. And I really appreciate the time that it's going to take to do this. And we just have to hope everyone, does it as they've done before, hopefully, with integrity.
Final comment?
But I want my households copied.
The
Right.
last little note I'll make is probably in the top section, when you're talking about like community initiatives and different programs, I would probably put community events within that, like a feast, farmers market, that sort of thing, and to see what the perception is of street parties and do people care that the street is blocked off? Do they not like the street blocked off? I think that'd be really great to get that kind of temperature check out there.
One other thing. So I've mentioned this at the last meeting just about notice going out for something. So I just want to confirm when the postcards go out about this, it will go to the owner and occupant. Like I hope that this would get mailed to every address in Shorewood in addition to people who own the properties, because I want to make sure that renters have every opportunity to do this too.
That's right. We're
Okay.
using the same
Great. Thank
address list for Shorewood today.
Thank you.
Just a real quick question on section 1, question 6. What Shorewood really needs is what's the objective of that question? What are we trying to get with that? What kind of answers have we historically gotten?
Bookstore, hardware store.
I was going to
Joking.
say, yeah,
Yeah.
okay. I mean,
Tacos.
Taco restaurant.
Okay.
Yeah. Margaritas. Yep.
got it. Yeah, I mean, to Trustee Baldoff's point earlier, I mean, if we get valuable feedback on that. It'd be worth keeping. Otherwise, it might just be a prompt for further comments about current service levels or what we.
I can
Thanks,
look
we
at
should
that
make
when
a
I
note.
bring it back to the board for the next meeting and see if you want to keep it after all.
Yes.
Under environmental, it seems like a lot there. Waterways, reduce air emissions, pollution, climate change, adaptation, plastic waste, green space. I just wonder if that could be edited to make it more meaningful for literally what can my municipal government do in this sphere? Like reducing air emissions. I mean, we've tried to go to, we're pursuing electric police squads, but, other than that, I mean, we can't buy public works vehicles that aren't even on the market yet, I mean, I just wonder how meaningful some of those items are. And are we going to say, well, if we have anything in the village, we're not going to allow the village staff to buy any single-use plastic water bottle. Okay, great. What are they supposed to buy? I just wonder if that's meaningfully phrased if we're trying to literally save the planet. If it's too much.
If anyone can do it, Shorewood can.
Right, set the bar high. I would like to close the discussion at this point to stay on time and welcome the board to submit additional comments upon reflection after the meeting. Excuse me. And then we can, I believe this is going to come back to us at a certain point for action or for more discussion.
Right now in the communication plan, it's slated for action.
Okay.
But again, we have a little bit of time
Okay.
before the survey is released, so we could bump it if we need.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn committee of the whole.
Move to adjourn committee of the whole.
Second.
Motion by trustee Kudo, seconded by trustee Ursing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are now adjourned for committee of the whole. Next, I would like to convene the meeting, the business meeting of the village board. Has this meeting been properly noticed? Oh, this is a special meeting. I'd like to convene the special meeting of the village board. And is there a call to go into closed session?
I
Or
can
is
make a
there a
motion.
motion? Okay. You can read it.
I move to adjourn into closed session pursuant to 19.851G to confer with legal counsel on strategy regarding pending litigation on various legal matters involving East Capitol Neighborhood Association versus Village of Shorewood.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, motion to go into closed session by trustee Moore Baldoff, seconded by trustee Ursing. Any discussion? This does meet criteria for going into closed session, so I'm in support of it. This will be a roll call vote.
Trustee Stokbrand,
Aye.
trustee Orndorfer,
Aye.
trustee Ursink,
Aye.
trustee Kudo,
Aye.
trustee Moore Baldoff,
Aye.
President McCaig.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
All right, we go into closed session at 7:02. We could. Thank you. Are we ready to go? All right, I'd like to call excuse me, let's try that again. Take two. I'd like to call the regular meeting of the village board to order at 7:32. Has this meeting been publicly noticed?
It has in accordance with law.
All right, and all trustees are present except for trustee Lind, who is excused. I thank everyone for their time, talent, and patience in advance as we conduct the business of the village. This takes us to a special order of business, of which there are none this evening. Item 5, consent agenda items. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I
So
mean,
moved.
oh, I'll second.
All right, motion by trustee Moore Baldoff, seconded by trustee Kudo. Any discussion?
I'd like to pull item B.
Okay, 5B. Anything else? All right, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda with the exception of 5B, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries with the consent agenda being adopted with the exception of 5B. Item 6, items removed from the consent agenda. 5B, consider regular village board meeting minutes, March 20th, 2023. Trustee Arndorfer?
Yeah, just two small notes. One, just the technical thing. We just want to make sure we add the date for the meeting to the minutes. And then also, record should show for roll. I was excused. I was not present. Sorry.
Thank you.
Hey, just trying.
Good catch.
I'm
Good catch.
fessing up. Okay.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Otherwise, good.
All right. All right, motion to approve the minutes with those corrections.
So moved.
Second.
All right, motion to approve by trustee Stokebrand, seconded by trustee Kudo. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We are now moving on to item 7, public hearings, of which there are none this evening. Item 8, citizens to be heard. This item is for matters not on the agenda. Is there anyone in attendance this evening that would like to be heard? All right, seeing no hands or anyone in the courtroom, we'll move on to item 9, new business. Consider WSDOT agreement for signal timing improvements to mitigate traffic impacts of I-43 rehabilitation project. This item is presented in our packet with materials, and who on staff is available
I
for
am.
questions? Okay. Are there any questions regarding this item? Yes.
I guess I'm wondering what difference does it make if we approve this? Because I mean, I feel like this is something that the state has to do as part of when they do a road somewhere, that they have to obviously within 3 miles of their project, they have to do a traffic study to do traffic mitigation. And I guess I'm just wondering, so this is they're going to do a study, it looks like from May 1 through June. Does this mean then they're going to, like, somehow our traffic lights are supposed to have something to do with I-43?
Mhm.
Like,
So
I say it's
essentially,
about turning, like it's like Morris, Downer, wherever there's a traffic light. But then are they going to say you need to time your lights longer? So all the people trying to get off of 43 who take Capitol Drive and then want to shoot whichever way, then we're going to have to change our traffic lights once, or?
so we've requested a service agreement from our village engineer Strand they would like to maximize the streetlights through the corridor. So Strand would look at the streetlights and see if they can be timed any differently given the traffic loads that we anticipate. And then the agreement with the DOT is for them to reimburse us for the cost of Strand doing that.
So like this part of the freeway is already, it's just on that. It doesn't, I mean, I'm just wondering what good does it do before it's really under construction? If they do this now, I think it's between March and I think the date said March 6th, which is a little out of date, to June 30th. Like they're going to look at our traffic pattern then. And I think this project goes until December 2024. And they were supposed to, this survey is going to tell us what we should do with our street lights and then hope it works for the next year and a half while this goes on.
So I'm not sure if they're working in any other projections. Typically they do based upon traffic load and what they anticipate to divert, so that they can assess what that impact is on the lights in that municipality. and that the engineers can then provide a recommendation on how to program the lights to maximize their efficiency to move traffic through. So the goal of doing it in advance is to be prepared so that you modify your street lights to accommodate for that load, so that when it does transition, you're maximized for efficiency, or as good as you can be.
I guess my point is I know that their job is to move cars through a location. But I hope that, if we've got children crossing the street, elderly people crossing the street, I'm sure Strand will represent us well in this, in that, pedestrian safety is a bigger deal to me than moving cars through fast. And so that's my only concern here. Traffic mitigation. I don't like the sound of that at all.
I don't think there's any intention here not to have those safety procedures and protocols in place and consistent.
So thank you for raising that concern. I think we would all support that priority.
And did I see the state is offering 22,000, but we're only paying Strand 16, so Strand is found they could do it for less.
Correct.
We don't get to pocket the state.
No, we asked. Just kidding. I'm just kidding. No, we didn't. But I'd be happy to if you'd like.
I was looking for extra revenue.
Right, right.
Trustee Ursink?
I'd like to make a motion.
Thank you.
So I move approval of an agreement between the Village of Shorewood and Wisconsin Department of Transportation for 2023-2024 traffic mitigation related to the I-43 Brown Street to Capitol Drive Rehabilitation Project.
Second.
All right, motion by trustee Ursink, seconded by trustee Arndorfer. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Moving on to the next item, consider professional services agreement with, apologies. Consider bus shelters in the North Oakland Avenue roadway design.
Was there one before that?
Yep. No,
Yep.
I think we do have the professional service agreement with Strand.
Apologies.
Yep.
So one is an agreement, a legal agreement, and the other is professional services. Okay, consider professional services agreement with Strand Associates for Capitol Drive construction signal timing review. So based on the action on the previous agenda item, this is the professional services agreement that will have Strand Associates initiate the work and be a invoice for that. Trustee Ursink?
I move approval of Strand Associates task order number 2302 in the amount of $16,000 for Capitol Drive construction signal timing review.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by trustee Ursink, seconded by trustee Moore Baldoff. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Moving on to the next item, consider bus shelters in North Oakland Avenue roadway design. I believe this comes to us from Public Works Committee, where there was a recommendation to proceed with requesting MCTS to install a B2 shelter at both the northbound and southbound Kenmore and Oakland bus stops and include the shelters within the design for North Oakland Avenue.
Yep, you nailed it. I mean, that sums up what we discussed, and we all agreed we'd be moving forward with one of their bus shelters, just kind of their standard shelter from MTCS that would be placed by Metro Market. There's like an awning there, and there's some decorative brick. It would be placed right there. So, and then was there one across the street as well? There's one across the street as well.
Northbound and southbound.
Yep. And we did discuss sort of maybe potential design opportunities. If we could include sort of public art, and there's really no opportunities or options if we want to go with one of these sort of standard stock shelters. So we decided to still proceed with the shelters because they are free to the village, and that's very important for us.
Appreciate that. And I noticed in the memo there is a pretty lengthy, detailed list of questions and then responses that the trustees can review. So that with that, I would ask for any questions regarding the matter or a motion to approve. Trustee Ursink.
I should have a question. Can you walk us through just briefly the discussion around making them look better or other opportunities?
Yeah, I think, if we wanted one of their stock shelters, we cannot modify that. It's not recommended to modify the glass because of the visibility. And I think Rebecca was also a part of that conversation. She could probably, entertain us a little bit more about the design and why we couldn't design them. I think we had that conversation because that was something we brought up. And maybe Leanne was the one that actually talked a little bit more about that. But
I remember one of the pieces of conversation was we were like, oh, could we like paint them and like
Yeah.
put like a mural on it or, just like make it look nicer. But Leanne, flagged that for one, like the type of paint and like the painting process would be difficult. It's not just like you can't just like go out and like spray paint it, and that it would also likely void, for lack of a better way to phrase it, like the warranty by MCTS, that they wouldn't be, if we modify the structure, then if something happens to it, they aren't responsible for that, and they wouldn't like replace it for us at no cost. So, I mean, which is unfortunate, right? Like if it's like, oh, we like painted some pretty flowers on it, but something else happens to it unrelated to the paint, they would say like, sorry, you modified our structure.
And there seemed to be a overwhelming sort of consensus with the residents that came in to discuss it and that wanted to see these happen, that design wasn't, the aesthetic wasn't the priority. The priority was the actual bus shelter. But, personally, I'm very open to that conversation to see what we can do. I think there could be a lot of opportunities still, and I'd like to kind of keep pushing for that, if possible. And I don't know if I don't think this moves the needle if we say no to this. I don't think, I think we have to, at least my perspective, we'll have to move forward with the bus shelter, but there might be some wiggle room before we get that installed.
And I don't think that there had been a direct conversation with the county yet of like, okay, if we paint this a nicer color, it was just like that it could void that warranty. So I think that was kind of an open discussion point. So I do think if there is a way to make them look nicer, that would be great, but not if it means like we lose the structure. Because definitely the consensus from the residents that we heard from and advocates that we heard from was that having the shelters was really important for a lot of folks and they want to see them.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any problems with shelter. I mean, having a shelter. I mean, I looked at some other places. I mean, obviously there are parts of the city of Milwaukee and have ornate bus shelters.
Yeah.
Signs, local artists and what have you. There are some places that have bus shelters with natural roofs, this just seems like a really ugly, for lack of a better term, a really ugly option. Maybe there's some conversation to have with the bid about, around these shelters since they're right new. I just don't want to, it just feels like if we put them in, they're in, right? Or if we have the county put them in, they're in, and there's just not a whole lot we can do with them. And once they're in, I would feel terrible taking them out, knowing that some people are counting on them there.
Mm-hmm.
So I would, I'm going to vote no, but not because I'm against the shelter, but because I look at other options that might exist, even if that's a partnership between us and the bid or something, just so that it isn't this ugly bus shelter that you see all over the place. Because I think we can do better while still providing shelter for residents and the folks.
I have a question then. I'm going to support this. I supported it in committee. I'm going to support it. But since the Oakland shelters, like this is just including shelters in the design, to Trustee Kudo's point, down the road, if say the bid later this year is like, oh, actually we hate these, and some of our members want to pay for a nicer structure, that wouldn't preclude us from doing that, right?
Well, we would.
Because this is just including the shelters in the design.
Correct. So they would include that type of shelter.
Right. So if they said
In the
we want to
design.
pay for, the same dimensions It looks really nice. We could do that.
Yeah, I think the cost actually then would come to the village because MCTS is not going to maintain any shelter
Right.
that they don't, that's not of their
Okay.
stock variety. So I think one of the,
They only maintain the ugly one. Not the.
so that's really, and from my perspective, from the business perspective, I'm like, well, I don't want to make, I mean, I don't have an open checkbook. So like, I don't know if anyone would fund them. I can't take a gamble on doing that, right? I wouldn't advise you to right now. I think the shelter is important. I think at some point in time, if you do, they do have like an artist program, with the shelters that does require, but that's fully funded by the municipality or the sponsor. So we at all points are liable for any damage to that or how it's maintained. So if at some point in the future after they're up, a program does get created that some other group would like to fund and manage.
Because we can
Happy to
modify
enter.
those, correct? I mean, can we modify them? Are they
I would
ours?
assume
No, they're MCTS.
And that we cannot modify them once we assume them, right?
Right, theirs.
So they're their structure.
Right.
They do have like an art component or program that they do that would allow them to continue maintaining the structure, but they will not pay for any of the art, modification of the
Got it.
art, maintenance of the art, or redo of the art within those. I think that when we also have the secondary concern where the police chief has said, hey, these structures are great, but please keep them free for visibility.
Yeah.
Meaning like we just want glass so
Clear.
that we can see through.
Mhm.
If there was an art proposal or something that was well thought out in the future that they reviewed and said, oh, okay, maybe that could be accommodated. I think that's a discussion for a future date.
Great. We can continue with the discussion, but I think if there is the will of the board to, it sounds like maybe there's not resolution, and so it would be okay to put this back in committee if the board is not comfortable moving forward tonight. So I'll just put that out there as an option, but trustee Kudo and trustee Stokebrand had their hands raised.
I prefer to use the word plain. So the new plain bus shelters will match all the other plain bus shelters, and at least we'll have that going, right? I don't think we can, it's a way to get some money back. I mean, something that we can use in our village for the county, from the county, get some of the taxpayer money back here. There's a need. We can only get 2 paid for by the county, so let's just do it. And the other thing is, you have to think about the visibility of the storefronts behind those. A lot of storefronts, they put a lot of effort into how their windows look, and if you go with something besides a transparent glass, I think you could, it's not that great for that village business either. So I'll be voting in favor of this. I do want to point out, though, I think this all sounds great, but there's going to be some cost here, if I'm not mistaken, because these are going to go where some of our decorative bricks are. Am I right about that? And so there will be some costs coming up here because I believe for permanency, they have to take them out and put them in a concrete slab.
Correct. And then the repaving of Oakland is being funded by TID 5. So it will come from that and not the general fund. But yes, you are correct, which is another reason why we need to plan and accommodate for them within the design.
Trustee Kudo?
Was there any discussion in committee around, I know some bus shelters, specifically downtown, have advertising on them that was there any discussion in committee about GTS taking it? Bus shelters or?
I think it came down to the visibility and talking to the chief of police. She really wanted to keep these kind of open and visible. So
We're allowed to prohibit.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
allowed to say.
oh yeah, sorry, I didn't understand.
Yeah,
Yes.
no.
Yeah.
I was, yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry.
they
Yeah.
cannot, they couldn't go off and do that without our permission.
Okay, so is there a motion to approve or to defer? Yes, trustee
I'm
Stokebrand.
prepared to make a motion.
Okay,
I move that the village board proceed with requesting MCTS to install a B2 shelter at both the northbound and southbound Kenmore Oakland bus stops and include the shelters within the design for North Oakland Avenue.
Second.
motion to approve as presented by trustee Stokebrand, seconded by trustee Ursink. Further discussion? I'll be supporting this for the same reasons listed this evening. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
All right, motion carries 5-1.
I was going to make a comment before we did that, but I don't
Oh,
know
I
if you saw me.
apologize.
That's all
I
right.
didn't see your hand.
It would be great to bring, even though we agreed to do this, it would be great to bring this back into Public Works Committee to see kind of to explore all opportunities with this, as far as the design.
Yeah,
future
that's
design.
why I suggested deferment, because if that was going to be the case, because I believe that this motion does tie us to that
This-
shelter.
Right. But then doesn't MTCS have a artist program?
They do. It's already established.
It's already
Yeah,
established.
it was
Right.
included within the paperwork that we reviewed at the last time. So I think really,
Is that something we can discuss though in committee if we want to be a part of that?
I think it's something that you can discuss. I think the funding becomes the question.
Right. Yeah.
I think.
No, and that's something we could talk to the bid. There's different opportunities
Mm-hmm.
there, but I think that's the conversation.
That's the point I made a little while ago,
Yeah,
that because the ones on Oakland, we're just including them in the design
Right.
of the road, like they're not getting installed this year.
Right.
So we
Now
can
I understand.
have
Okay.
that conversation on the Oakland ones if there is an artist program that
Mhm.
somebody's interested in doing. So
It'd be great to talk to the bid and have that
So-
conversation.
So could it be a future item where we send it back to committee, or do we just make another?
I think, Arthur, if you'd like to discuss it with the bid, if they're interested,
Mhm.
I'm happy to send out the link to the program and the information that was included in here before. They can consider it, and if they have an idea of something that they'd like to move forward with, then they can connect with me.
we could talk about that at the next bid meeting.
Okay, so it doesn't
Yeah.
require board action. We could just.
I don't
give it
think at
as
this
direct-
time. I mean,
Okay.
we can
comfortable
share
with
that
that.
information.
Sure.
It's been shared already within the memo. We can
We'll
share
bring it up
together.
at the next board meeting, or we'll get it on a future agenda. We'll discuss it. And if it's something that they feel like they want to, move forward with, then we'll bring it back for future agenda item.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you very much. I'm sorry for my confusion on that. All right, so moving on to our next item. It is item 9D, consider ordinance 3054 amending parking regulations on North Estabrook Parkway, south of East Capitol Drive. This also comes to us from Public Works Committee, correct? With a recommendation to approve the motion as presented. Is there anything that you want to add, Trustee Ursink?
No, I'm really grateful for staff for recognizing this as an issue, and this little portion of street was left out of the whole parking plan when we went through it. So, and I was notified by some residents at the Oaks that have had a really hard time with the different parking sort of scenarios on that street. So we were able to get the parking removed on the east side, and now it's just going to be no parking on the east all year round, and parking on the west side of the street. So there'll be more visibility to the sort of driveways into the Oaks and the Harbor Chase building, which the residents were very excited about.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, is there a motion to approve
Sure.
or questions?
So I'll just move to approve ordinance 3054, an ordinance amending parking regulations on North Estabrook Parkway, southeast Capitol Drive.
Second.
Motion to approve by Trustee Ursink, seconded by Trustee Kudo. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. That concludes new business for this evening. Moving on to reports of village officials. Village President, I have a proclamation. Whereas Marilyn John accepted the call to public service in 2001 when she was appointed as an election inspector for the village of Shorewood. And whereas Marilyn John served as an election inspector until 2004, when she then became the chief inspector for wards 1 through 4 until 2010. And whereas Marilyn John returned to the role of election inspector in 2011, and whereas Marilyn John was well known for her stylish red, white, and blue patriotic colors, and always complimented by the electors of both wards 1 through 4 and wards 5 through 8 on election day. And whereas as of April 4th, 2023, Marilyn John will serve her final shift as an election inspector. And whereas the village board of the Village of Shorewood deems it most appropriate and fitting to publicly acknowledge the many years of servitude Marilyn John has given to the Village of Shorewood. Now therefore, I, Ann McKay, Village President of the Village of Shorewood, Milwaukee County, Wisconsin, do hereby express the appreciation of the residents, election inspectors, chief inspectors, and the village clerk of Shorewood to Marilyn John and present this proclamation honoring Marilyn John for her outstanding service to the Village of Shorewood. Dated this day, 4th day of April, 2023. And I believe that it is her birthday today. So also best wishes.
Oh,
Oh.
okay. Great work.
Thank you very much. I have no further reports this evening. Village manager, trustees. Any reports? Trustee Ursink.
You know, I don't have anything written up, but tomorrow is a big election here, not only for Wisconsin, but here in Shorewood. And I just wanted to acknowledge Trustee Stokebrand. It was, I think I think she ran a fantastic campaign. It was a fantastic process, within our community. The first time we ran unopposed, so we didn't get to go through this process of talking to people in the community or to the level we have right now. And I just want to say that, looking at the national politics and the bigger picture, it's all there's so much discourse and there's so much divisiveness, and I think here in Shorewood, it was we talked a lot about the issues, and it was a very sort of sane and it was a very sane kind of campaign between the three of us, and I really just kind of appreciated the process and appreciated running with somebody like
No COVID this time.
no COVID this time. So yeah, it's been fantastic, and excited for tomorrow.
Excellent. Thank you. Any other reports?
Make sure everybody votes.
Yeah.
Thank you, staff and poll workers in advance.
All right. Reports, village manager.
We have and I don't want to belabor this, but we have the initiatives and work plan Q1 update. Most of all of these projects you've heard of within the last 2 months, so I don't want to belabor the subject matter, but we are making progress on all of the initiatives that were set forth by the village board. Here you see it outlined by department and some of the different initiatives that are out there within each individual department. More
I had a
depart-
question.
Oh, sure.
Is the review of the recreational space in parks, is that the Manager Anderson, is that the surveys that they did? The parks and
Listening sessions.
the listening sessions?
ma'am.
Oh, okay. And then I was wondering, I thought communication management plan, was that not sent to university too?
It was sent to university.
Okay,
But we also have the community or the communication policy document, which there are like pending items that we have on there that we will continue as time is available to update.
so would you not wait until you got the university thing back before you started on that?
They've got a lot of research that they're going to be doing. I'm not sure if we could maintain scope if we have them look at all the chapters that are in that current table of contents. So I can, of course, speak with the program director to see what all we can add on as well. Because one of the things that we did want to add for this particular project would be the community survey itself. We want them to also look at the website perhaps. So there's just quite a few things that we'd like to look at for that group.
I would think the website would be a list.
Thank you.
Okay.
And we still have 20 homes to get those water meters in.
Hard to believe, but it's a lot less than we started with.
So
As a matter of curiosity, when can the Community and Business Relations Committee expect to see an ordinance change relating to chickens?
I believe that Bart has it on his work plan. I want to say May or June. I can verify that again, but it's closer to summer.
Great.
I know you're excited.
I've had multiple people ask me as well, so. People are into the chicken idea. I don't know.
Yeah.
But they at least want to talk about it.
I look forward to the conversation.
Rest assured, the conversation is coming back to us.
Wow, really?
All right, moving
Motion to
on.
adjourn?
Yeah.
There was no second.
Anything else?
Oh, well. I think
Second.
Anything
I did my best.
Second.
There's another item. Can't-
Oh, okay, you were done?
Yeah,
Village
I'm
Manager?
done,
Okay,
unless there's any questions. You're welcome.
all
to
right.
ask.
So motion to adjourn?
But there's future
Oh.
agenda.
I apologize.
Oh, okay.
Future agenda items? All right, seeing none, motion to adjourn.
I would like to renew my motion to adjourn.
I would like to renew my second.
Motion to adjourn by trustee Kudo, seconded by trustee Ursink. All those in favor say aye.
I.
We are adjourned at 8:03 PM.
Wow.
Everybody
An hour
get some
early.